Culture Pop Remix.
Hello and welcome to Culture Pop Remix number 16. I'm your host, Orren Merton, and I'd like to wish a happy Passover and happy Easter to those who celebrate, happy spring to those who don't. And in this episode, I wanted to talk about a bunch of things. So the week before this, I was at WonderCon, a pop culture comic convention in Orange County, California. Saw some cool animated premieres there, which I'll talk about. And speaking of movies, this is the opening weekend of Ready Player One. And I saw that and wanted to give a spoiler-free review. So that's what's coming this episode, and let's get going. So WonderCon used to be in San Francisco a bunch of years ago, not quite sure how many, but it moved to Southern California, to Orange County, and it is sort of around Easter for the last, handful of years. And because I go to Comic-Con International, the SDCC Big San Diego show, which is in July, and this one is put on by the same company, I haven't really felt a huge pull to go to WonderCon every year. So the last time I was there was 2014. But this seemed like a good year to go again because I had some friends to go with, one of whom had never been to any kind of pop culture / Comic-Con before. And I thought this would be a really good one for him to go to as an opening salvo, if you will, because it's big enough that there's cool things at it, but it's still smaller than Comic-Con International, which can be just overwhelming with 200,000 plus people. I mean, there may only be 150,000 in the San Diego Convention Center at the convention, but certainly around San Diego, where there's all kinds of things that you don't need to actually be badged for Comic-Con, and there's probably 250, 300,000 people that descend on the gas lamp in San Diego for Comic-Con. And this one, it had more people than I've ever seen it. I think in 2014, there may have been 20, 30,000 people, I'm guessing. Well, now I'm going to guess that there were 70, plus thousand people. So it's definitely gotten bigger. And this is one of those things where bigger does tend to be better because it means that more companies will have booths in the exhibit hall. It means more of your sort of highbrow comic producers and film and video and TV and everything will show up. So I think it was a good size, and it'll probably get bigger and bigger as time goes on. But right now, I thought it was a really nice sort of second-tier con as far as size went. It was big enough that there were some big-ticket panels and movie premieres and stuff like that, but small enough that there weren't lines you had to wait in overnight or any of that. So let's talk about the first premiere that we saw. I love seeing the Warner Brothers animation, the DC animated universe films. I love seeing those premieres at comic conventions because not only do you get to see the animated movie, but you also usually get a panel of the producers, the writers, voice actors, etc., that really talk about what they were doing and what they were going for, and it enhances the experience of the film itself. So this convention, the premiere from DC Animated was Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, which you can get on digital video and Blu-ray and everything already. It came out, I think, Tuesday. And man, it was a lot of fun. It is not your daddy's Saturday morning cartoon, that's for sure. This is an R-rated cartoon. It is fun. It is well written. It has a lot of humor. It's got a good story that doesn't fall apart or rely on stupidity or whatever. It's interesting, and it has twists. And I have to say, this was certainly written for adults, and the script was clearly written for adults. And it's not like, big sex scenes or anything, but there's a lot of blood. I mean, you think about the Suicide Squad. I mean, this is a group of bad guys who are called in to do the kind of really ugly, dirty work that, kind of the pristine superheroes wouldn't want to do because they wouldn't want to, get their hands in this kind of muck. And the way the Suicide Squad is kept in check is Amanda Waller, who runs them, has put bombs in all of their necks. So if they go off the res, their head blows up. And as you might imagine, this means not only are the squad members themselves very violent in the execution, word chosen precisely, of their task, but also some of them don't necessarily meet the most pretty end. So I really enjoyed this. If you like the Suicide Squad, you're gonna like this. It's got some of the characters you would expect, specifically Deadshot and Harley Quinn. But it's also got a bunch of characters that you don't see in the Suicide Squad all that often, like Bronze Tiger, Killer Frost, and it's put together very well. And, there's a reason for the bad guys to be doing what they're doing. There's a reason for the good guys to be doing what they're doing. There aren't any really good guys in this, but it's well put together. It's an adult animated film. Everybody gets a moment to shine, and if you like animated films like this, you will like this one. Okay, so also there were a bunch of other panels that we took in. I got to see the panel of one of my currently favorite authors, Kevin Hearne. He wrote the Iron Druid series, which is a really wonderfully written urban fantasy. If you liked American Gods, it's kind of along those lines in that there are kind of those the gods walking around and stuff like that. But it's a whole different story. There's a different kind of hero and everything else. The hero being the Iron Druid. And of course, I have an Irish wolfhound. And the fact that the Irish wolfhound is the companion of our Iron Druid, and that he actually talks to his friend, the Irish wolfhound, who talks back because he's a druid. So he taught his Irish wolfhound language. Come on, wouldn't you? It's just a great series, and it's ending. It's ending with this last 9th book. And I'm glad I got to hear him talk about his process, about the book, about why he's ending it at this point and everything. And if you haven't picked up the Iron Druid series, start with the beginning one, Hounded. You'll like it. It's well written, and it's got depth and fun. And at the same time, there are some messages behind it that are not, they're not preachy. And they're not stupid. So yeah, it's a good series. It was good to hear him talk. I went with my friend Golden, whom you might remember from the podcast on Black Panther, and she is a voice actor, as she said. So we took in some voice acting panels that were very, very cool. And we did see on Sunday one other animated movie. Also a DC animated movie. But this one's a little different. Well, this one's a lot different. It was called Batman Ninja, and it's from Warner Brothers Japan. And it is absolutely batshit crazy in the most entertaining way. It's a mishmash of everything, East and West. It's got the Western characters, Batman, Robin, Catwoman, Red Hood, Nightwing, all of the characters you're used to, all the villains, Joker, Two-Face, Gorilla Grodd, all that. But it's like part anime, and then it goes into robo mech style stuff, and then it's just, like little monkeys kind of forming into one body and punching things. It's just way out there, but it's also really funny, and it's clearly being played just for the wild fantasy. And if you wanted to see Batman in a wild fantasy, this is it. And it's not a Western style fantasy. It's more anime and all the rest, but it is really, really fun. It's just a fun, just insane 80 minutes. So that was also really fun. And that's really Comic-Con or WonderCon. There weren't a ton of lines that we had to stand in. In fact, I think there was a total of one, and otherwise able to just walk right into things. And it was more crowded, but there were a lot of cool booths, all the good pop art that you want. I walked away with a sketchbook from Terry Moore, one of my favorite comic artists. I walked away with a really nice Wonder Woman print from an independent artist in Artist Alley. It's definitely a fun con. And if you're in the Southern California or want to go next year, I would definitely recommend it. So let's move on. All right. Finally, I want to talk about the movie that's making all the money in the world. Okay, maybe not quite, but it is making huge bucks, and it's been getting good reviews and for good cause. So this is the opening weekend of Ready Player One, which is sort of Steven Spielberg's first entry into the tentpole video game style action thriller. And boy, he just nails it. So I never read Ready Player One. This is a book that's been around for a while. And in fact, the author of the book was one of the co-writers of the movie. So certainly it has his blessing. Now, I saw it with Golden, and she said that it did make changes from the book. In some ways, she said she thought the book was actually faster paced and a little bit more exciting, which is amusing considering this is pretty much a CGI action film from the first scene to the last. But I think that speaks well for the book. Of course, she said that there's, subplots and more depth in the book, which you'd expect, I think this was a really engaging film. The images were great, being able to, kind of pick out pop culture Easter eggs all the way through it. Hearing music I loved from the 80s, it's all a ton of fun, and that makes it great and really enjoyable and really watchable. But, if I sit down and think about the film, within the first part of the movie, after a couple scenes, our hero, Z, and our heroine, Artemis, Z tells her, "I love you." And it's like, okay, we saw you in like 2 scenes and you really weren't that close to each other, and now you're in love with her. Okay. Now, I'm sure there's backstory. There's a lot of backstory about kind of the world they're in. This is a future world. Everyone uses VR to escape because the world is pretty grim. But we don't get much of the grimness. We get to see some of it. It's not all just virtual reality. We get to see some of the real world. But just how grim it is never gone into detail. But you know what? This isn't that kind of movie. This is an action adventure movie. And you've got Steven Spielberg right on his directing A game. Anyone who thought that, he's kind of past those kind of movies, Indiana Jones was a thing of the past. Not really. I mean, he can show, the young whippersnappers how to do it. I mean, this movie keeps you on the edge of your seat. And this is that kind of movie. I mean, this is not a kind of deep movie. It tries to contain, messages about society, about checking out, about what's important, about all kinds of things. And I think it doesn't, it's not preachy in any way, but it does hammer them home. And I think that's good. I like it when my sort of popcorn movies have a little bit of depth to them. But this isn't, a movie where you're going to really be looking for that kind of fleshed out everything. But it is good fun, man. You are going to enjoy this film. So if you're looking for a fun action CGI kind of sci-fi near future film, man, you are absolutely going to get a kick out of this one. And I went in knowing nothing about Ready Player One, other than seeing the trailer and knowing, they're in virtual reality. Okay, that's pretty much the beginning and the end of my knowledge. I didn't need to know any of the characters' names, any of the plot of the book, anything. It's all there. Well, as much as is there. And it's worth going to if that's the kind of film that you're looking for. And that is this episode. So I hope you enjoyed listening to 15 or so minutes of what WonderCon and Suicide Squad Hell to Pay and Batman Ninja and Ready Player One were all about. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your Passover and your spring and your Easter. And if you have any comments or questions, please email me at info@culturepopremix.com. If you like this episode, please leave a review in the Apple Podcasts app or iTunes or wherever it is you get your podcasts. Be good to yourselves and each other, and I will catch you next time.
Culture Pop Remix.